This podcast is a part of the PodMania Podcasting Network. Check out podmania.co.uk to check out more of our great podcasts, features, reviews, match ratings and previews spanning the crazy and diverse world of professional wrestling.
Hello, my name is Simon Miller from What Culture Wrestling, and you are listening to the PodMania Pro Wrestling Podcast, and you better keep listening to it. Why? Here's why.
You're listening to the PodMania Pro Wrestling Podcast, a sample of the best pro wrestling podcasts we can produce on our tiny budget. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Podcast Addict, CastBox, and all other podcast platforms. If it's wrestling you want, check out more of our great content at podmania.co.uk. Let's do this.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the PodMania Podcast, the Top 6 Countdown. I am your host, Rob Goodname, joined as ever on these things by Garth Jackson and Chris O'Brien. Garth, my tired old man friend, how are you?
Amazing. I've got 2 beers and some green tea.
Displaying both sides of how you feel at the moment.
It's like 2 sides of my life.
That doesn't sound like one person's thing, but it sounds like you went to a pub with someone who's teetotal.
It literally sounds like you're like, right, I want to get plastered, but I don't want a sore throat at the end of it.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Come on, guys, I'm not a fucking animal. Chris, again, he says, with a note of anxiety, how are you?
I've been thinking very complexly about the concept of death recently because I'm not sure I believe in it.
Every week.
Every fucking week. You're not sure that you understand. You're not sure that death exists.
Well, like, we don't know what happens when we die.
In which you've just admitted that death does actually exist.
No, but the thing, we've attributed a name and therefore a meaning, but is that meaning correct?
We've got to give it some sort of name, otherwise no one knows what you're on about. You can't just say, when such and such, when he, it gets very confusing.
By the way, Once More Feeling was season 6, episode 7 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
That's blatantly not what I was thinking.
But I searched Once More Feeling, and that's what came up. Put an album.
I'm sure it's a song or an album. Placebo, of course it was. Great band, underrated. Anyway, the theme of today's top 6 is finishing moves, because in wrestling there is nothing that gets a wrestling crowd going like a really good finishing move that just wipes out an opponent and is legitimate, that really you look at it and you think, fucking hell, that's great. You can see why that ended a match. Something, for example, like the Black Mass, which is my favourite finisher in the WWE at the moment. The Black Mass is quick, it's clean, and it would legitimately knock you out. I mean, it legitimately broke Lars Sullivan's jaw, which, again, it wasn't a great match, and it then led to that whiffed Black Mass. But, however, today we're not talking about best finishing moves, because we are gluttons for punishment. So we are talking about the worst finishing moves. And let's be honest, there are fucking hundreds to choose from. Moves that you look at and go, that, of all things in the world, that finished him off. Not in that way. Very, very different wrestling.
That could be a good metaphor for a bad finishing move. You could have a great match, and it would be like the best foreplay you've ever had in your life, and then like you're in and out in 3 seconds, and like she's there crying, you're crying, and like
everyone's crying.
Yeah, and quite frankly, Christmas is ruined for everyone. Sorry, Grandma, but
oh my God,
I don't want to do this podcast anymore. There's something gone on in your life, Chris. Do you want to talk about it? Do you want to use this platform to talk about it?
I mean, like, I have very complex feelings about death.
Oh, God. Right. Anyway, I'm not getting into this again. So anyway, the way we're going to do it is we're not going to give it to you as a normal top 6. What we're going to do is we're going to do it as more of a round table. We've selected 6 moves, 2 moves each, which are just the absolute drizzling fucking shit. And we're going to talk about them, talk about how they're shit and how we hate them and how they just don't fit with the wrestler in most cases. We'll then go through some honourable mentions as we go as well, but there's not a top 6 in a conventional way. But we are going to talk about them anyway. Garth, talk me through your worst finishing move, your first one in your list.
The worst. It's the, I don't know, does it have a name? The elevated corner chest stomp thing?
Low-key called it the Warrior's Way.
Yeah, it's wank. Whatever that is. Because
it's wank.
The whole setup is such a convoluted mess. And then if, like, any move where it's blatantly obvious that the other person is helping you deliver that move is a shit finishing move. It's a shit move altogether. But when Del Rio used to do it, it was just absolute pits. Because the people had to literally hold themselves up to take this fucking kick. It's like, what are you doing, you moron? Just lie down.
Just move.
Like,
you know, it's like, have you two ever played Super Mario Sunshine?
A long time ago.
I was just going to say, I bet you were 5 at Garth has.
It's like when the painter Mario is running towards Peach, and you're like, just move.
Exactly.
To be fair, when Loki did it, like, it was still convoluted, but at least he could do like convincing, like, it's like a proper foot stomp. Like, you could believe that the way he did it, that would actually hurt.
Yeah.
Being contrived, and it was still annoying. But when Del Rio did it, he kind of just stepped down.
Just shite. It is literally one of the worst finishing moves I've ever witnessed. It's worse than a punch as a finisher. Like, just
stop spoiling what I do agree with it being convoluted. It's incredibly like, literally. I can't think of a more convoluted. Well, actually, I think we will see some. But yeah, like, this isn't a bad finisher in the term, because I can believe that in that situation, if it happened naturally, it probably would finish someone.
Mm-hmm. Like, if someone was, if you put someone in the tree war and they were legitimately trying to escape somehow, and you managed to catch them, but not when they're just standing there waiting. Like,
I have seen this move be done naturally, because it happened, I believe, in the Ibushi Ospreay match at Wrestle Kingdom, where Ospreay was trying to get up to get Ibushi down, and Ibushi just stomped on him. And, like, that was actually a fairly natural setup, because instead of Ospreay was sort of being held down by Ibushi, so he was going to try and get him up, and he wasn't holding himself up. But yeah, when Del Rio did it, like, people were just sort of like holding on to the ropes, waiting, because Del Rio was apparently scared of heights or something.
It's just wank.
It is just.
It's. I think it is the convoluted, because, like, you know, you stand on someone's chest and, you know, it's gonna fucking hurt. But it is that whole, it's not even holding themselves, stopping themselves falling. It's the fact that there is tension there, because they are literally hauling themselves up into an unnatural position to take this move, in a position you would never ever find yourself in. It is baffling. I hated it when Del Rio did it, because Del Rio had such a wide range of submission moves that he could have used as that signature move, and he just insisted on using that shitty stomp, and it lacks impact. And I think fans don't pop for it. I don't think I've ever seen fans pop for it. Even, like you said, Chris, even when Loki used it, I don't think people pop for it, not properly. So,
well, I don't think he used finisher.
Who, Del Rio or Loki?
Loki.
I was just going to say Del Rio did. No, maybe he didn't, but even so, you know, you see these high impact moves, you want people to be like popping, like, yes, oh my god, that's amazing, and people never did, because it was just a little bit shit.
Yeah,
it was a little bit unbelievable.
What I think it's worth quickly doing before we continue is, like, laying out what we think makes a good finisher, because I think it comes down to two things. It needs to be able to happen naturally, like, this needs to be a position someone would actually end up in, and it needs to have impact. Like for example, I don't think any of us have the AA. The AA is good in one sense because it happens. It's like a natural position getting into a 5-man's carry, at least in terms of wrestling. But it's a bit shit because it just turns into a body slam.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be something that can be done anywhere. That's the main thing. Like,
I don't think it needs to be done out of nowhere. 'Cause it's for everything. Which
I don't mean out of nowhere. I mean, like, say you are in a, I don't know, like outside the ring, for instance.
Yeah. Well, in that case, maybe 0619 must be shit.
You should be able to run it. See, I do and I don't like that move. Again, it's another one it's good, but it's convoluted again. Like something like the RKO or Spear or the F5. These are all things where you can pretty much do it anywhere.
Yeah. I think also a good submission. Actually, we'll go on to submission. It's Rob. Sorry, just Rob. We've sort of taken this off you. Please continue.
No, not at all. I think you're absolutely right. You know, it's got to be something that is impactful, that doesn't look unnatural. And I think that's something that's key in all of our selections. They're all unnatural moves.
Like, don't get me wrong, high risk moves are a thing, but it needs to look like it hurts. Like, for example, the Playmaker. That looks like it hurts the dude more than it hurts.
Yeah, I was going to say
because you're driving your own knee into the mat.
Well, you see, Chris, this is why I had an issue with the big ending. You know, the big ending, on first look, looks like a really, really impressive move. And then the more you look at it, the more you realise that Big E is actually taking the majority of that move on his shoulders.
Like, it works as the midnight hour when he does it with Woods or Kofi, because then it becomes basically an elevated DDT. But, like, yeah, when it's just him doing it on his own, it's sort of like, it looks good. Like, if you don't think about it, it's awesome.
Exactly.
The problem is we're free cunts of a podcast. We think about it a lot.
Yeah.
Anyway, so, Garth, you've got, and I quote, the elevated foot stomp thingy.
Yeah.
Chris, your first one, dear.
Right, so both mine sort of spawn because
Is that Garth opening a beer?
yeah, it's like I started talking and Garth's like, I'm in for a long one.
He's going to sit back and relax.
With his green tea.
Me and Rob love Japanese wrestling. We have 2 other podcasts dedicated to us. Go listen to the Stardom Cast. It's my favourite thing I do. But
just out of interest, who had Chris go smarky first, me or you, Garth?
Tenner.
Right, but like, you look at a lot of the biggest moves in Japan, they're either submissions or they're strikes. Like, strikes being like lariats and forearms, and where you also see like in especially like a Suzuki match or a Shibata match, they're rolling for like knee bars and stuff like that. And I love that. I love that sort of legitimacy. I always kind of have before I could articulate it. I think it's why I sort of became gravitated to Punk, because to my 10-year-old mind, it's like, oh, he comes off as someone who can actually fight. Turns out he isn't. But,
we're talking about a stellar MMA record.
Oh, stellar MMA record of 0-2. Garth has a better MMA record. Anyway, so like my things are like bad examples of finishes I would normally love. Like, and I'm gonna start with the claw, like the whole family of claws.
What, like the head claw thing?
Yeah, no, because my biggest problem, I think a key to a good submission finish is that there can't be an overtly obvious way out of it. Like, for example, it's a weird thing because, like, you look at like the ankle lock of sleeper, there's overtly obvious ways out of it, but then like angle will grapevine the leg, or in the sleeper hold someone will be taken to the ground or something like that. Whereas for claw, there's an incredibly obvious way to get out of it because your fucking hands are free. You know what else is free? Your legs. And like, I specify because Rob ordered me specify a specific claw. I picked the armpit claw because for one,
yeah,
gross. Like, I don't want to touch someone else's sweaty armpit. Sometimes. But also,
just sometimes.
depends who's sweaty armpit.
Not even if you really desperately want to win a match.
But here's the thing.
Ticky.
If it's Finn Balor, I'll literally touch Finn Balor. But here's the thing. It's not a good thing though, because like literally, you have full motion of your arms. So like, punch the fucker. You know, there's an incredibly obvious way out of it, and unless like weirdly enough, the only claw holds I believe are like when Great Khali does like the headline, because I can imagine with him be like, just in a kayfabe sense, in the world they have created, he is so fucking big that like I can imagine if he was pressing down on your skull, you wouldn't have like the full have a wherewithal to do it because your skull's being compressed. I can believe that. I want someone fucking destroy a watermelon. Who can destroy a watermelon?
Like, but I don't mind when somebody does like a shoulder claw when they're sat on the mat, because
I do, because like at that point it's just a rest hold.
That's fair enough. But obviously not as a finisher. But
yeah,
like anyone using stuff as a finisher now, it's got to be
back in the day, because like people try to tell me it's like how much more real wrestling was back in the day, despite the fact Ultimate Warrior existed.
Hey.
Right, you can't pretend he looks like a legitimate fighter.
I wouldn't mess with him.
I wouldn't mess with him, to be fair.
But like, yeah, like I get told like how more logical it was and how close it was to fake fighting, and I'm looking at claw hold, like maybe in like Britain with like the catch style, or like in Japan where like there was actual shoot incidents quite a lot of the time. But like, I'm sorry, I've never seen, like outside of one example of Great Khali, I've never seen a claw hold as a finisher look good. Can you two think of any? You two have been like Garth, you've been around since the Gold Rush era. Can you think of any?
Honestly, probably not.
Yeah. And like a submission finish is such a like. Just look at Moxley versus Brody Lee from AEW. How the other week? How hot was that finish?
Yeah.
And like, and that was all down to it being like a submission knockout finish, and like they're great. I love them, but like this is a bastardization of what I love, so I hate it more.
The only exception I can think of, really, and you know, it's a divisive one. The mandible claw, and again, I understand that obviously, you know, a lot of people just go, "Why don't you just fucking bite down?" Which is a legitimate, you know, just bite him, get your fingers out of my mouth, but you can I don't know. I see that one as a slightly more legitimate one than an armpit claw, or you know, an ear claw, or whatever other ridiculous claw they've got.
It is slightly more legitimate, but again, you still have full range of motion. And at the end of the day, with Foley, it wasn't like it became a comedy thing. It turned out it's not a comedy thing, but it definitely became part of a comedy act. So,
yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with you. 100%. You're right there, Chris.
Yeah, I was holding my whammy bar and dropped it.
Just the whammy bar?
Yeah, because it's from my Jaguar. You can take it out.
Oh, okay. No, I was thinking, why have you taken the whammy bar out? Are you not a whammy player?
No, but my Jaguar was just sitting next to me. My fidget spinner's on the other side of the room, and I needed someone to fidget with. So,
fair play. Going along the whole convoluted route, I've gone. My first one is the people's elbow. Now, this is on for two reasons. One, because even though the rock bottom isn't the most impactful finishing move, it's basically a slightly shit Uranagi, it's still more impactful than this. It's seen as a far more legitimate finishing move than the people's elbow. The people's elbow started as a joke. It was done as a joke. The fact that this has finished off people in legitimate championship matches is an absolute joke. And the amount of it's up there with the 5 knuckle shuffle. the fact that that person has to lie there for this ridiculous amount of time whilst, the pageantry takes place, the bouncing off the ropes take place, and then it's what? It's an elbow drop. It's not even a Macho Man elevated or top rope elbow drop. It's just a dropped elbow drop, which we see thousands of times in a match, but you're telling me that Irish whip off the rope, that bouncing off the ropes, has any difference whatsoever.
It's not just that all momentum is lost because he stops.
Exactly. Does a dance and then just sort of drops the elbow and that's it. And it's not even like it was his secondary finisher. It took over the rock bottom as his legitimate finish.
Yeah.
Didn't he beat Punk with it?
Yeah. But I'm just angry about that whole thing, to be honest.
We're all angry over that thing, Chris.
Not Garth, he doesn't like Punk. Yeah, no, there's not much you can say with this one because it's like just a bit shit. And I don't know how it morphed from the rib it was because it was like a rib in like a triple threat cage match, wasn't it? And he just did it to dick about.
Yeah,
and then because it didn't finish. I can't even with some of these I can come up with kayfabe explanations, especially Garth's next one. I have a very good kayfabe explanation for why it works, but yeah, what the fuck? It's not even like he's dropping it on his head; he drops it on the chest.
Exactly.
Honestly, if it was dropping on the head, he could at least go, "Oh, it might have knocked him out." But no, he drops it on the chest. Unless he's going up against someone with a fucking heart condition, I don't see the problem.
King.
Well, yeah. I mean, my big thing is, if it's a bigger dude that's dropping that elbow, if Yokozuna is doing that move and dropping an elbow, then you have more of a case for it incapacitating you.
Andre had the elbow as the finish.
Andre the Giant was 800 foot tall.
Exactly, so it works there.
Exactly. The Rock is just a muscly dude, and he wasn't that muscly at the time.
No, he's quite a lean little guy, wasn't he?
Exactly. It's convoluted, it's stupid, and the fact that it has taken over from an actual finishing move is just ridiculous, and that's why I've taken the elbow drop. The people's elbow. I think it's ridiculous that was ever a finish. Anyway, on to round 2. Garth, your second pick.
The kind of, I sort of suppose in the same vein as the people's elbow, the fact that it's more pageantry than it is an actual move, and that is Rikishi's stink face.
He hits them with his butt.
Because people get hit with those types of moves normally in a match all the fucking time, and yes, Rikishi has a big fat butt, but
I'm taking that out of context.
I'm gonna clip that out and use it as my ringtone.
No,
I like big butts, I cannot lie. But it just, because again, it's another one that started as a joke move, and then moved into his finish, and it was just gross and just shit. It was, I just never understood it. Because Rikishi had other moves.
He had a sit out tombstone.
That's it. He used to do that where he would put his arms out and then
the Samoan driver or whatever.
So it was just shit. And like you say, the same thing with Rock's move. It overtook his other moveset because obviously it got an easy pop. But I never liked that move ever.
I have 2 kayfabe explanations to why this might work.
Come on, then.
I feel like Garth isn't going to like these.
Okay, first of all, as you mentioned, it's quite big, quite broad, could block out the sun. And actually, in the Simpsons episode "Who Shot Mr. Burns" Part 1, that's what we used to block out the sun. But it could very much suffocate someone. Are you telling me, Garth, if something that big was pressing against your face for several seconds, you wouldn't pass out?
Yeah, but people didn't pass out, did they? They just sort of choked and gagged for a bit.
There comes my second explanation. So Rikishi doesn't look like he has the best diet. To put this the best way, he looks like a man whose shit is almost completely liquid.
Dude, what?
Lovely.
So here's my theory. He takes a massive dump before the match and doesn't wipe his ass. So the guy is essentially a walking bioweapon. And the warhead is in his butt.
Right. Oh, God.
So, yeah. Here's the thing. In essence, it's a hip attack, and hip attacks can be used to great effect. Like, for example, Umaga did like that hip attack in the corner, and it looked devastating because he had quite a run on it. Problem is, Rikishi can't run.
Exactly. And
Do you remember when he turned up in TNA?
Yes.
Junior Fatu.
But he wasn't allowed to use the name Rikishi because the WWE owned it.
Yeah.
He had bootylicious across his.
How bad is that?
So like, it just made me think of like fucking Christian. Can you handle this? Just ridiculous.
At least Christian had a good run.
No, that's the thing. The only person who beat Junior Fatu in TNA was Christian, and then he was like, "Right, I'm no more jobs.
No more jobs." Yeah,
No
right.
more. Apart from once, Angle found him on the toilet, which makes me think he was preparing for a match. Just as we were talking about. So yeah, there's kayfabe explanations to how that could work, maybe.
Anyway,
I don't know. Do any of my explanations make you like? Does any of my explanations make you like the move any better?
No.
Does it make you hate it a bit more?
I just don't care for it much. It's one of my least favorite moves of all time. Hence the list.
much as I appreciate, Chris, the thought that's gone into these kayfabe reasons that the what's it called, the stink face is a legitimate move. I think it's more the fact that Rikishi is a big dude and Vince McMahon has the humour of a 5-year-old, so Fat Man hits people with bum. I think that's probably more it.
Good shit, quite literally.
Good shit,
Yeah,
indeed.
good shit.
Chris, then, your second entry onto this list.
It's going back to some of the massive of things I like. It's shit strikes. Now, a strike finish. I've always loved strike finishes. For example, the 619 or the Sweet Chin Music before Dolph Ziggler and the Young Bucks decided to kill that gimmick. And again, there's great examples of like Stan Hansen's Lariat, the Rainmaker, the Tower's Elbows. Like there's loads of great examples of great strikes. Black Mass, actually, as Rob mentioned before. But then you have like these fall into two categories. One, where the strike looks weak. For example, I have an example in my head and I have lost it.
Is it not the Painmaker? What do it called?
The Judas Effect.
The Judas Effect. Yes, Garth. Thank you very much, because that has never looked good. Because Jericho doesn't get quite close enough for it to connect properly, and also he already does one off the second rope, and for some reason that one hurts less.
That's another pet here, to be fair, like where people do a variation of that finishing move within the match. Yeah, and it's just a normal move.
Yeah, it's like in some cases it works. Like for example, with Finn Balor's coup de grace, when he does that onto someone's back, they're not in the position to be pinned, so he can't go after it straight away. Or like when some people do repeat finishes. But I'm fine with that if the story's told well. But yeah, it's literally not meant. It's just like, oh, a nice elbow from the top there. It's a Judas Effect. It's a Judas Effect from the top. It should hurt more. And it's the worst. Like a lot of people get saddled with shit strike finishes, and then it's the one that doesn't even make sense with like for example, in the world of WWE, Big Show can knock someone out with one punch. Now that's not my problem here. Like even though the punch doesn't look all that stiff, he's fairly sizable, is Big Show. So I can imagine if someone that big punched me in the face, I would be knocked out. Fine. But like me and Rob were actually talking about this before we went on air with Week in Wrestling a couple hours ago. Big Show, and by that logic, every time Big Show even touches someone, they should shatter into pieces.
Yeah.
Like when Big Show chops someone, it should literally cave in their chest. and like it should have the same impact as a Walter chop, and it does not. And it makes it doesn't make sense within the universe they have created. Things don't need to make sense within our reality because this isn't our reality. Let's go with gravity. It just doesn't make sense, and I hate it. And especially for the first one, it makes a finish of a match feel so flat. I don't know. What do you think?
Agree? Because I get it. Sometimes, you have to. Some people can do it. Like you say, the Big Show should be able to knock somebody out with a punch, but then he shouldn't be punching anybody within a match ever.
But he does.
That's the thing. It should be. They should be smarter about it and protect it more. I mean, legitimately, if Big Show give you one of those chops in your chest, it should cave you in. You're done.
You should be confident like that.
Yeah, but
honestly, if they did that, that'd be fine. I don't mind wrestlers who have short matches when they have kayfabe reasons, but for some reason, they feel the need to make Big Show go 20 minutes.
Yeah, like you say, you can you can have the odd exception, like the brain chop, because it's a freak of nature doing it.
Yeah, but the problem is that then there's some guys who are like Great Khali who doesn't even connect with the brain chop.
That's what I mean, and you mentioned Stan Hansen and stuff, but there should be nobody else should be doing it, and it should be not done in a match until the match is ready to be finished.
No, exactly. And for example, a clothesline is an incredibly easy move to throw. Stan Hansen will throw a fewer match, and that's near the end, and he'll tease it at the beginning. Again, Walter, his chops aren't seen as a finisher, but especially more nowadays, he saves them for later in the match, and if he hits one early match, that's a statement of intent. Again, Joe Coffey's finisher is a lariat. He doesn't hit a million lariats in a match. Actually, if Blackpool's anything to go by, he doesn't hit much in a match, but there's ways to do it, and people who don't do it well, it's so jarring, and I will never enjoy it.
So, just before I give my final entry into this list, Chris, going back to you briefly, have you got any honourable mentions?
Okay, so this becomes an honourable mention because me and Garth made a truce when we were making this list, but I do not like the leg drop, and it's sort of for the same reason. I don't like diving moves by normal sized people on the ground, like the leg drop, the warrior splash, and I know that Ziggler used to finish people with an elbow, things like that. I'm not big on that because you're not big enough for it to have the impact. It's the same reason why the people's elbow doesn't work with less theatrics, basically. And yeah, just not massive, not massive on that. And Christ, I had another one and it's gone. Oh well, that's my honorable mention. Oh, I know, but Wasteland. Fucking people shit on the AA, but Wasteland's okay. You're literally just throwing them onto it's shit. Do better.
Be better. Garth, you're usually one for moaning.
I had a couple, but I'm going to go... Should I go? Because I think we've mentioned two like this before. I'm going to go with the Worm.
How did that not make the list?
The only reason I didn't go for it is because I knew Rob had the people's elbow. And it's quite a similar thing, isn't it? It's just a fucking elbow drop.
Yeah, but the one's worse. It's like a karate chop from someone who's never studied karate. But I did karate when I was 3, so I know more karate, but it's quite too fucking high. It's
like the amount of times that that move lasted longer than a match that he did was incredible at the time.
Does he actually hit it off?
Fuck knows.
Because I remember last time he was in WWE, like at NXT Arrival as an open challenge to the Ascension, and they teased it, and it gets over because it's ridiculous, but also it should never be used against anyone more than a jobber.
No. No, it was just wank. I mean, it's hard to argue with it though because the crowd was so behind it and so into it. So you kind of understand why you would do that move, but
this is an attitude. This is an attitude era crowd, man.
Yeah.
Like, they're a bunch of fucking drunk frat boys who are going to go listen
to me. It's not a finisher. This should be a setup for a finisher.
Yeah.
But I hated that move. I always hated it. It's the whole thing where he does the whole like his arms out to the side and then he does the little skip and stuff. And it goes alongside the 5-knuckle shuffle and those types like the fucking shake, rattle, and roll knee drop thing. Who Rogue Dog used to do was wank. But the worm just took the piss because it took so fucking long. If you were playing a WWE game and that got hit on you, it was just like, oh fuck's sake, I'm gonna sit here for 30 seconds while this animation plays out.
You know what? You know who does the worm really well is old Otis.
Who?
Otis. Yeah.
Didn't even know he did it.
The fucking
he does it. Actually, if you ever watch, there's this documentary on the network called Breaking Grounds. It's actually pretty good. It's like a camera on the wall thing in the performance center from like 2015, and then like that's how Otis got hired. Yeah, like he was at his tryout. It's like, can you do anything special? I can do the worm.
Done.
Yes, he got hired.
Let's make him the next Scotty Too Hottie. This is going to be slightly controversial, but I don't care. I hate the 619.
So the what?
I hate the 619. I've always hated the 619, even when Mysterio was absolutely fucking tearing it up in WCW. I absolutely hate it.
Didn't use it in WCW.
Pardon?
He only used it as a feint out dive in WCW. He never used it as like...
No, he used the Tiger Feint Kick. He never used it as a finisher, but he used it as a move, and I hated it then. And I don't know, we talk about Alberto Del Rio's foot stomp as contrived. There is no move more contrived than the 619. Yes, it's nostalgic because it's Rey Mysterio. Yes, we're used to it because it's Rey Mysterio. But for God's sake, how many different ways can a man fall into the ropes and lie there and literally stay there stunned as this man runs off the ropes and hits you like so long that a person can just turn around. And most times, and I know this is for timing, but it winds me up anyway, most of the times, I only noticed it in modern day, people are looking round over their shoulder to see where he is. If you are looking around to see where he is, fucking move. Yeah. And I think it's that timing, it's the contrived way that they've got to try and get you into that position. The Tiger Feint Kick itself is quite cool, I don't mind that. It's just the contrived way that you've got the Hurricane Rana into the ropes, and then you have to lie there for a billion hours while you wait for Ray to run and then hit you in the face, and then you've got the weird Hurricane Rana or whatever to finish you off afterwards. I just think it's incredibly contrived, and I hate it.
Well, all I can say to that is you're wrong and you're awful and you're ruining my childhood. But
I agree about it being shit.
Oh, not with my fault.
Thanks, Garth.
In terms of the setup, it's not that hard, but like I do agree, like the waiting there for half a million years, it's not as bad as say the worm or the rock bottom. But yeah, I think it gets past just because it looks cooler, but also like if we're gonna shit on Warriors Way, we kind of have to shit on that.
Yeah.
But also, I'm trying to think of. But like halftime, the 619 wasn't actually its finisher for the longest time. It was the West Coast. Apart from 619, just set it up.
Yeah,
it still makes no difference. It should not ever be a finisher. It's even now. It should not be a finisher. It's shit. And
it got over in progress though, because one of the referees can do a 619, so now his nickname is Lucha Pass.
Which what?
Lucha Pass. Because his name is Paz. Lucha Paz. So it's when I went to see Progress in Newcastle, we did a 619, and you know what? It's one of the highlights of that night.
Was it a really slow night?
I don't know. It had that Devlin versus Dragunov match, which fucking rocked my world.
yet a referee doing the 619 was the thing you took from it.
I mean, no, but like I have a feeling you two are sick of me talking about Devlin versus Dragunov.
I'm more sick of you being a smark, to be honest.
Well, I'm sorry that I watch wrestling I enjoy.
Oh, I watch indie wrestling. Anyway, let's move on to the final entry on this list. It's mine because that's the way I've managed to work it. Didn't mean to, but there we are.
Totally.
And it's a very, very specific move because ordinarily, I don't mind a spear. Goldberg's spear in WCW was the most destructive move. It was made to look that way. Even Roman Reigns has a great spear. Bobby Lashley has a great spear. The way he flips out of it looks really cool. Edge is one of my favourite wrestlers ever. I love Edge. He's in my top 10 favourite wrestlers. I think everything he does is cool. His spear is dog shit. His spear is it's a big cuddle. Let's not mince words. Basically, he molests someone to the ground is what happens. He builds it up. He's got the crazy eyes. You know, he's pulling at his hair. Brilliant. And he sprints full tilt wherever he's running at. And then he gently sort of flumps into them. And gently they go down together. And he sort of holds them in his arms. And he lays them down on the ground. And sort of makes sure they're all right. It's like he's tucking a child into bed. It's just, there's no... The spear, the whole point of a spear is that it's impactful. It knocks the wind out of you. It completely knocks you for six. And Edge's spear just doesn't. And this is one of my favourite wrestlers. And I found it so hard, even at that time, buying it as a legitimate finish. I mean, I prefer the execution, for God's sake, despite the fact that it's a shit pun. I prefer that because at least it's basically an impaler DDT. At least that knocks you out. Head driven into the mat. This, basically, all you're doing is, oh, Edge likes me. He's giving me a cuddle. That's it. It's just not great. It's one of the worst iterations of the spear I've ever seen.
I have some kayfabe to go around here.
Oh, wonderful.